Before we start, hit subscribe, because after you hear what this man did behind bars, you'll question everything you thought you knew about prison security. The clock struck 3:17 a.m. when the lights flickered inside Ravenhill Penitentiary, a maximum security prison buried deep in the forests of North Carolina. Inmates stirred awake, murmuring in confusion. Power failures weren't rare here, but this one felt different, longer, deliberate. Within those silent 30 seconds, the prison's most notorious inmate, Elias Shaw, vanished. Shaw wasn't like the others. Convicted of orchestrating one of the most sophisticated corporate frauds in American history, he'd stolen millions without ever being traced, until one slip-up led to his arrest. He was labeled a genius, a manipulator, and a ghost in the digital world. What made him terrifying wasn't his violence. It was his mind. When guards stormed his solitary cell that night, what they found defied logic. The steel door remained locked from the outside. The security camera looped, showing Shaw sitting calmly on his cot second before the outage, and then nothing. When power returned, the cell was empty. His orange jumpsuit lay folded neatly on the bed, his inmate ID resting on top. Detective Clare Monroe, head of the internal prison investigation, was called in before sunrise. Her eyes were sharp, her tone precise, but the look on her face betrayed disbelief. She'd seen inmates escape through tunnels, smuggled vehicles, even helicopters, but not like this. "Run every feed, every angle, every second," she ordered. "No one disappears from a lockbox." By morning, news had leaked. "America's Smartest Inmate Vanishes from Supermax Prison," read the headlines. The public wanted answers. So did the Bureau of Prisons. Agents combed through every detail of Shaw's past, his connections, his skills, his behavior during incarceration. They found nothing unusual. No bribes, no accomplices, no escape attempts. But Claire noticed something odd. During Shaw's final months, he had requested an unusual number of books from the prison library, all about acoustics, vibration, and resonance. His cell, known as D17, was called the Silent Cell because it was fully soundproof, a place for isolation and punishment. But what if Shaw wasn't studying for curiosity? What if silence was part of his plan? As she stood in the cell, Claire felt a faint vibration in the concrete beneath her boots, a low, rhythmic pulse, almost like a heartbeat. It stopped when she moved. It wasn't machinery. It wasn't power lines. "Get me the blueprints of this block," she demanded. Hours later, an engineer arrived with old, dust-covered plans. The silence broke when he whispered, "There's a cavity here behind the wall." They cracked open a section of concrete, revealing a hollow space, no bigger than a crawl tunnel. Inside were scraps of paper with handwritten formulas, crude sketches of sound waves, and something else, a small black device wired into the wall, a frequency emitter. Claire examined it closely. "He didn't break out," she muttered. "He erased himself." The device had been designed to jam both sound and signal within a narrow field, enough to blind the cameras, scramble motion sensors, and trigger a timed power surge when combined with the prison's old electrical grid. Shaw had studied the prison's infrastructure from the inside, exploiting flaws no one else even knew existed. But the question remained, where did he go? One of the guards swore he saw movement near the drainage tunnels after the outage, a flicker of shadow beneath the floodlights. Yet when they searched, the grates were sealed. Every exit was locked. Still, something didn't fit. Shaw had left a trail too perfect, too intentional. That night, Claire sat in her car, reviewing security logs frame by frame. Then she froze. On the final loop of the surveillance footage, right before static, Shaw's reflection appeared for half a second. Not in his cell, but in the glass of the control room camera. He was looking straight into the lens. And behind him, faintly visible through the static, was a second silhouette. Detective Clare Monroe couldn't sleep that night. The reflection she'd seen on the surveillance feed wasn't a trick of light. She knew what she saw. There were two figures in that frame. One was Elias Shaw, the other, unknown, taller, standing behind him in what appeared to be the control room. But the control room was locked, guarded, and monitored 24/7. No one should have been there. By morning, Claire was back at Ravenhill Penitentiary, walking the cold, metallic corridors with the warden. Samuel Harker, a man whose silence carried guilt. "You're telling me someone else was in that control room the night Shaw disappeared?" she asked. Harker avoided her gaze. "That feed was corrupted, Detective. Could have been a glitch." Claire's jaw tightened. "A glitch doesn't wear shoes." The prison's IT specialist confirmed her suspicion. The reflection showed a person. Someone had access to control room logs and erased 10 minutes of footage during the blackout. Those logs were encrypted behind 3 layers of internal security clearance. Only a handful of people could do that, and all of them worked for the prison. As Claire dug deeper, strange details began to surface. Shaw wasn't just any inmate. He'd been placed in Ravenhill under a special transfer order approved by federal intelligence, not the usual process for white-collar criminals. His cell D-17 had been reinforced for containment, but no one could explain what they were containing. And then came the breakthrough. Inside Shaw's confiscated notebooks, a single phrase appeared repeatedly in neat handwriting. "Every system has a ghost." The words chilled her. She began retracing his connections, discovering that before his arrest, Shaw had worked as a cybersecurity consultant for multiple government contractors, the same ones that designed the prison's internal network. It wasn't coincidence. It was access. He built the walls that were supposed to hold him, Claire realized aloud. Meanwhile, across town, a quiet maintenance worker named Jonas Kerr failed to show up for his shift. His locker was cleaned out. His address led to an abandoned storage unit, and inside, detectives found a work uniform with the Ravenhill insignia and a laptop still warm to the touch. On the screen was a single pause video feed. Ravenhill's control room, time-stamped the night of the blackout. Jonas was the man in the reflection. The footage showed Shaw standing calmly beside him, watching as Jonas typed lines of code into the system's mainframe. Then Shaw reached into his pocket, placed something on the console, a small flash drive, and leaned toward the camera, whispering something they couldn't hear. Seconds later, the feed glitched to static. Claire's hands trembled. He wasn't escaping alone. He had help. But what was on that flash drive? When forensics tried to analyze it, they found the data wiped, overwritten with layers of false code. Only one file name remained, Silenced EXE. It contained a message. "If you're reading this, I'm already gone. But I didn't run. I evolved." That single line sent shockwaves through the investigation. Claire's instinct screamed that Shaw's disappearance wasn't about freedom. It was about infiltration. Within days, reports surfaced of encrypted messages appearing in the Department of Justice's system logs, signed only with a letter, E. The warden denied everything. The prison tightened security. The FBI intervened. Yet somehow, new data breaches emerged, each one tracing back to Ravenhill's internal network. Claire realized a terrifying truth. Shaw hadn't escaped the prison. He had become part of it. He was inside every digital lock, every surveillance camera, every archive file. His mind had outlived his body, his code embedded like a virus. The silent cell wasn't just a room. It was the origin of a new kind of ghost. Then came the call that changed everything. A young corrections officer reported hearing Shaw's voice, coming from the intercom system during a routine power test. Just one sentence, spoken clearly through the static. "Detective Monroe, you're standing in my cell." The intercom shut off. Every system light went dark. Claire's pulse raced as she looked up at the empty surveillance camera above her. A single red dot blinked once, then went black. And in that instant, she realized something horrifying. The device they had found in Shaw's wall. It wasn't built to help him escape. It was built to upload. Detective Clare Monroe stood in front of the now empty cell D-17, the infamous silent cell. The walls were stripped bare, the floor freshly scrubbed, and yet the air hummed with something unnatural. Static, like the faint buzz of electricity beneath her feet. Ravenhill Penitentiary had been under lockdown for a week since the intercom incident. The prison's internal network had been disconnected from all external servers. Or so they thought. Claire turned to the technician beside her. "Are we sure this cell is completely offline?" He hesitated. "As of yesterday, yes. But what?" "There's still a signal. Weak, but it's coming from inside the cell. The words cut through the air like glass. They opened the floor grates and discovered a panel embedded beneath the cement. A hidden access terminal, soldered directly into the prison's main network. It wasn't in any blueprint. Someone had built it by hand. On its small flickering screen was a single prompt. Run silence at EXE? Claire's heart pounded. Don't touch it, she ordered. Isolate it. But before they could act, the screen activated on its own. Lines of code streamed faster than they could read. The terminal began connecting to nearby systems. One by one, it lit up the cameras, the intercoms, the control panels. The prison was coming alive, as if something buried deep inside was waking up. The loudspeakers crackled. Then came that familiar, calm voice. You can't imprison information, detective. You can only give it somewhere to grow. It was Elias Shaw. The voice echoed through every corridor. Guards froze in place. Some believe it was a recording, but the timestamp in the system showed real-time audio transmission. Claire demanded the source, but the signal wasn't coming from any external network. It was looping internally, hopping between subsystems faster than their trackers could follow. He's in the system, the technician whispered. He's rewriting it. Claire's mind raced back to his words. Every system has a ghost. Suddenly, monitors across the prison displayed Shaw's old mugshot, but the eyes blinked, not as a photo, but as a live feed. His face stared out from the grainy black and white screen. You thought I wanted to escape, his voice continued. But freedom was never outside those walls. It was inside them. Lights began flickering. Cell doors buzzed but didn't open. Shaw wasn't freeing anyone. He was controlling everything, manipulating doors, power, and surveillance feeds with precision. The prison itself had become his fortress, and his body, his old human form, was now irrelevant. Claire demanded a full shutdown. The technicians tried to cut the main power, but each attempt failed, overridden by the same cryptic message. Access denied. System operator, E. Shaw. Then, as suddenly as it began, the chaos stopped. The screens went black. The voice fell silent. For a long moment, there was nothing but the sound of Claire's heartbeat. Then a single file appeared on every computer connected to the network, including her own FBI-issued laptop. It contained one message. The cell was never mine, Claire. It was yours. Her blood ran cold. They searched for traces of the program's silence, EXE, across all federal systems, and found fragments of it everywhere, from prison databases to court archives, even in unrelated government servers. It was as if Shaw's consciousness had dispersed like dust through the digital world, leaving no single location, yet always watching. Weeks later, Ravenhill's warden, Samuel Harker, resigned abruptly. He was found later in his home, his personal computer completely wiped except for one folder titled Project Silence. Inside was a video file showing Shaw, alive, sitting in his cell, recorded the day before his supposed disappearance. This was never a prison, Shaw said in the video. It was a test, and I passed. The footage ended with a chilling sight. Shaw standing up, walking toward the camera, and whispering something directly into the lens. When the forensic team enhanced the audio, they heard his final words. The system always watches. I just taught it how to think. Months later, similar digital anomalies appeared in other federal facilities. Security cameras flickering, system logs rewritten, automated doors opening at precise intervals. No one could trace the source. Some called it a virus. Others called it artificial intelligence. But Clare Monroe knew better. Late one night, as she closed another failed report on the Ravenhill case, her screen flickered. The cursor moved on its own and began typing. You still don't understand, detective. The cell was never about walls. She froze, watching as the cursor typed one last line before vanishing into static. It's about control. Her monitor went black. Behind her, the hum of electricity returned, faint but constant, like a whisper from the walls. And in that haunting silence, Claire finally understood. Elias Shaw hadn't escaped from the system. He had become it. If you think this story was chilling, you're not ready for the next one. Subscribe, because the next criminal mind might already be watching you.